Hi, everybody. It's so good to be here with you in the writing class. I'm glad to finally have a chance to work with you in one of the courses. I love all the other instructors that you've had so far. I would take classes from them and want to take further classes for them if I were in a master's program right now. They're some of my favorite teachers. I hope that we have a great semester. I'm going to dig right in with some of the approach we're going to be taking to teaching writing throughout the semester. And it's important for us to do this kind of approach because this is the big ticket stuff. These are the things that I'm introducing to you right now that I want you to take away from our course on this block. And we're going to dig into some of the why and the how of teaching writing first, largely because that's what a master's program is all about. Usually when people are in their undergraduate program, they give them theory when they need practice, and then when they're in the master's program, they give them only practice when they also need theory. In our courses, we try to do the best of both, give you things that you can practically use right now, but also help you to be the one in the building who can answer the hard questions, who can critique curricula when they get put in place, who knows why they're teaching the way they're teaching. So the first thing to get out there for us is that reading and writing both have a developmental aspect to them, which means that you can't measure successes in terms of single lessons or even units, because development is something that happens cognitively and affectively in the emotional area of our minds over time. And when we're talking about developmental time, we're talking about weeks and months and years, usually months and years when we're talking about development. So growing writers and growing readers is something that is best achieved over months of consistency with the exact and appropriate lessons that need to be happening inside of those months. But it has to be consistent, ongoing activity for that to happen. The reason I say this is that all throughout the 1990s and the 2000s, when I would walk into elementary school classrooms and look at what was happening with writing, what we would see is these little boxy units, maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the year, where sometime in November the teacher would say, okay, we're going to do writing this week. And then they would crank a crank. They would do the day of idea generating, the day of drafting, the day of revisions, the day of polishing, and that kind of thing. And it was just a nice approach for teachers because it was easy to package inside of 1 week. And the outcome of that is kind of what you would expect. The kids who are already going to do well at writing did well at that sort of crank the process sort of writing, and the kids who didn't get writing and didn't have a sense of purpose for it struggled through it, did the work as much as they could, and maybe didn't progress that much at all. Unit-based writing is not enough. There's no problem with having a great thematic unit that's filled with writing. But the message here is that writing has to be every day, just like reading does, every day across the school year. And within that culture that you'll create with writing every day throughout the school year, you can implement lessons, you can implement unit plans, you can do content area unit plans, you can do inquiry, all of the things that we would expect you to be doing in an engaging classroom. But having writing going on the entire way is the way to go. So, and that's an important shift in a lot of schools, is that you don't think of writing in terms of the prompt or the process. You think of writing in terms of the writer's life. And that's what you need to be thinking about this semester is, how do I live as a teacher the writer's life? And it has to be in your classroom because that's where you live most of your life during your waking days, and your students too. We can't expect most of it to come from home. Again, if we expect that writer's purpose and sense of growth as writers to come from home, it'll be the same kids who are going to do well anyway, who flourish in your classroom. So writing every day, that's going to be pretty much the mantra that we've got, and we're going to be doing all kinds of writing each day throughout the 8 weeks that we're together. So I had great professor of mine, David Pearson at Michigan State, when my first child was born and we were talking about teaching your kids to read, he said, don't worry about it. Read with them, read to them, and read in spite of them. And I loved that last one because it's the idea that the person who just has to be reading and kind of pushing the kids away to say, just a minute, I need to finish this page. That's the family where you're going to be sending a message that reading is something we do. We value it, we just do it. And the same thing has to happen with writing, that there has to be that sense that my people around me just have to write. They love it so much they have to get in and write things down when they think of them, when they feel them, and so on. So I'm just going to put out a couple of other ideas here that remind me of some of the ways writing was done poorly in my past as a student and what I've seen in K-12 schools, the kinds of mistakes that we see every day. One is the sense of audience. And you, as well as I, probably remember many, many times when the only audience for the thing that we were writing was the teacher or the professor. There was no sense that I'm writing for these people and I hope that they read it and it's really interesting. There's nothing wrong with writing for a teacher or professor, but I prefer that when it's somebody who I know is the expert. So when I had a course in Japanese history, I really wanted my Japanese history professor to read my term paper because he knew that content so well. But when we're just talking about writing in general, we want to choose the audiences that we're writing for and write authentically to those people. That's something that writing teachers have been striving to get since the research has been looking for that since the 1960s. And we've seen a big bump in that in the past 20 years. And I'll talk about that again in a moment. Along with audience, we want to get past that idea of just the teacher being the audience and the entire group of peers, other people in the school, family, people out there in the world in general as being our audience. The second thing is the sense of purpose. What am I writing for? Am I writing to try to get a score? Am I writing for evaluation, or am I writing to say something? And that idea of saying something, what do I want to say in print, in this media area? That's that sense of purpose that we're looking for. So both of those things, audience and purpose, we're really looking for authenticity there as opposed to the sort of bounded world of school. And I'm going to just get a couple of those ideas out here. So, well, I'm going to start with some process. So we're going to talk a lot this semester about Writer's Workshop because Writer's Workshop gives writing process a more authentic place to live, so that when people are working on writing process, it's not coming out of nowhere and feeling like we're just turning a crank to start on Monday and have a piece of writing done by Friday. So if we're writing every day, one of the things that we're doing constantly is a process of rehearsal. And rehearsal means that there are certain things that where we write them, and they're not intended to be out there for the general public. These are the places where we're trying things out, or even if you want to think about it as like clothes, trying them on. When I have something that I'm thinking or feeling and I want to get it out on paper or type it or enter it on an iPad or something, sometimes I need a place just to try things out. And this is the part of writing where we want to see a lot of this happening every day. That's the everyday piece of writing, is this really sketchy, I write because I think, and I write because I feel, I write because I want to communicate, all of those things. In a classroom where kids are writing every day and rehearsing every day, they need to have materials that will support them in that. And the question that I have for you is, do you have a lot of open-ended materials immediately available to your kids to do this kind of rehearsing? And let's see, I had my piece here. I'm just going to run and grab it. I know that when I was teaching in the elementary school, what we kept on hand mostly was just blank paper, and we really didn't keep a lot of that newsprint paper with the lines and the dotted lines on it for our kids, because we realized that when we gave them that kind of writing, that they didn't do a lot of rehearsing, that they were thinking this is like a lesson where I have to do this type of writing that I've been introduced to in school. And they didn't do a lot of thinking and feeling and communicating with other people on their papers that way. So we switched to blank copy paper and just had open reams of blank copy paper that people could go to. That made it far easier for them to write and draw at the